So like you need that real bedrock of differentiation and like the value and the unique features that are the bedrock of your business, as you described, right? I have this saying that's like, safe wins the meeting, creative risk wins the audience, right? So it's like, you're right. When there's a bunch of internal stakeholders have been inside the four walls of this brand or business for innumerable years, right? Like all sort of beating the same ideas around in that sort of safety of their own space, right? Like that's not gonna get it done in the marketplace. So yeah, being really as objective as you can be, working with partners that can play devil's advocate on behalf of your audience, right, is like the best thing that you can do when you're trying to cut through that noise.
Your business's success depends on relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human, because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Karl Pontau. Each week, I'll bring you stories, insights, and practical advice that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week, I'm excited to connect with Tim Bradley. He is the co-founder of Tenant Video, a B2B-focused agency that has pioneered the video marketing trifecta to power mid-funnel marketing strategies. With nearly 2 decades of experience in video marketing, Tim has partnered with leading B2B tech brands like Cisco, Hitachi, Philips, and countless startups, bringing their stories to life with compelling video campaigns. Before founding Tenant, Tim was the executive producer at a large communications agency. In his 12 years there, he built, managed, and mentored a 25-person creative team while growing the business in competitive sectors such as high-tech, cybersecurity, and healthcare. He believes in creating work that cuts through the noise, methodical yet bespoke, scalable yet unique. Beyond client projects, Tim mentors aspiring creatives through workshops and portfolio reviews, reinforcing his belief that elevating new talent fosters a more innovative and story-driven industry. Congrats on elevating new talent, and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Thank you, Karl. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk with you about kind of building influence with B2B video, because there's so much I think companies are missing out on with how to use video to build connections, because there's so much of it has to be run past like legal and PR, and it goes through all these like different red tape and hoops. But by the time it actually gets out to the public, it's so like sanitized and kind of lacks any real character or humanity. So it doesn't work, because people want to feel that like connection to the real people on screen, not hear the corporate speak. So how do you help companies to avoid that trap and actually use video to tell stories in a B2B setting?
Love that. Loaded question out the gate. Yeah, I mean, it's listen, video is a hard medium to produce, right? Like but we can all do hard things, okay? So it's the most like unique and special because of the myriad amount of decisions you can make when producing video, right? It's like you got to consider that audience first and foremost, right? And then it's things like tone of voice and sentiment and the messaging, and then the visuals. Like, is this production with people and humans, like you said at the start here, right? Is it motion design and graphics? What's the music? What's the, just the soundscape, the sound design? There's like so much that is like sets the tone and pace of a good video and a good campaign, right? That like it's difficult when all of those other pressures are at the forefront. You just described like all the stakeholders and legal and L&R and all these sort of internal pressures to, if you're a marketer to perform at your best in the role that you're in, right? And like support the greater initiatives of the business, So I just like to acknowledge that at the front, that like content in general is difficult, right? To maintain and sustain and to provide value on all of your channels across all your ICPs, right? But video is the most sort of complex on top of all that. So acknowledging that first. If you lead with a video first mentality, right? You sort of do the hardest thing, the most challenging thing first. then you have such like a ripple effect across your whole ecosystem, right? Like that brand development, that story development, that tone and sentiment and visuals, like all of those things I described, right? Like all of those decisions individual they've come to bear. And now you have these incredibly powerful assets, these videos, these tools, this preferred medium by audiences everywhere, doing that hard work on your behalf in a very repeatable way, because now it's existing on your website, your 24/7 salesperson. It's existing on your social channels. It's existing in the arms of your, or in the hands of your sales force or your stakeholders, right? To like help repeat a very thoughtful and timely message again and again, right? So it's sort of this like bit of paradigm shift and a bit of like courage, right? To like do that. If you can do the hardest thing first, then it proves itself sort of exponentially, right, from there. So that's my like overall counsel, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's there's one thing that probably people are afraid of is they're gonna put all that effort into it, but if the message isn't great, or if they don't have, if it's not done well, then they're magnifying that poor message or the misalignment with their audience over and over and over. And so I think that's probably one of the fears that keeps people from making that initial leap. But it's also something that reveals that the foundation they're building their brand and their business on and their marketing is probably not as stable as they want to think, or that they're telling themselves it is. And so it's something that, again, with like I mentioned, so much of the content that these companies put out, because it has to go get approved by so many different departments, they don't really understand the creative, don't understand what they're trying to accomplish. They're just trying to basically be like risk avoidance, and end up kind of undercutting their own success, because the way you actually get people's attention is, and actually like stand out from the audience, from the competitors, is by doing something that's a little bit risky and that evokes some real emotions and doesn't play it safe all the time. And I think when you have video that is like, it's probably the most like authentic way of, or has the most potential for authentically conveying the humanity of your leadership, or of the people that are working at your company, or the impact you're having, that it's important to understand that it's worth taking those risks if they're calculated and you've done your homework and really understand where your audience is coming from. That when you push beyond that comfort zone is when you really start to see the sort of responses that you're expecting or that you want. But if you just refuse to take those risks, then you're stuck creating the same sort of mediocre, lukewarm content that gets lost in all the noise, and it's really noisy out there.
Honestly, I couldn't say it any better. The fact is you can't do great marketing on bad positioning, right? So like you need that real bedrock of differentiation and like the value and the unique features that are the bedrock of your business, as you described, right? I have this saying that's like, safe wins the meeting, creative risk wins the audience, right? So it's like, you're right. When there's a bunch of internal stakeholders have been inside the four walls of this brand or business for innumerable years, right? Like all sort of beating the same ideas around in that sort of safety of their own space, right? Like that's not gonna get it done in the marketplace. So yeah, being really as objective as you can be, working with partners that can play devil's advocate on behalf of your audience, right, is like the best thing that you can do when you're trying to cut through that noise, right? And it's a pretty gray landscape out there right now of like sea of sameness and AI galore, right? So it's like that opportunity to take the right strategic swing on behalf of an audience that, based on that, where they are in the buyer's journey, doing it in a really thoughtfully calculated, creative way is going to pay off. If not near term, certainly long term.
Yes, I imagine you have some success stories of working with companies and getting them to take those sort of risks. Do you have like an example you could share of, and if you need to like change names or whatever, that's fine. But it's like examples of when you've worked with someone to push out of that comfort zone and the results you got from it.
Yeah. So the one I like to talk about is it's a cybersecurity client, right? And like they came to us at this inflection point of a bit of a rebrand, right? We actually were sort of like in lockstep, if not even in front of the rebrand moment. And I like this story because of, or this situation, because of what you described. It's sort of like the magnifying glass effect of like producing a piece of video and how it sort of enlightens everything else in your ecosystem. So for this instance, they relative startup based in Tel Aviv, but they're trying to break into the US market. And so just quite a bit of change as far as like positioning and messaging inherent, right? And so we help them with sort of two sides of the same coin approach, the way I describe it. So we help them with produce this like very anthemic piece, like a bit of a rally cry that's less about like, look at us, and more about the royal we of this audience and our customers and where we all aspire to go, right? So this sort of catalyst or like flagship asset that aligned all internal stakeholders, of course, through the messaging of creating this piece, but it also aligned externally with like their positioning in the marketplace, right? So sure, that's great. That's like a really helpful tool, this anthem, right, that lives front center on their website. It's like that main video on their YouTube page or channel, and that really helps give that expression of why they exist, why the audience should care, why they're different, right? Now, the other side of that coin was a formidable explainer video. We all sort of know what those are, right? But it's that what you do and how you do it, that real like showcase of, or demonstrate, like that demonstration of your values, right? But how do you insert a little bit of conflict, right? Because like without conflict, there is no story, right? So it's that juxtaposition of this sort of like your current state and the possibility of your future state audience, right, or buyer here, right? So that helped really build that initial buyer's journey for them, right? Where it's like, sure, they have some semblance of advertising happening on Google or elsewhere, and they've like sold this click, right? And now they're on their website. And with these two assets, they've already started that trust building through these key tools, right? That anthem with the why, and that explainer of what and the how, right? From there, we're working towards customer stories, right? So that validation of who is this for and where, right? And so that's that video marketing trifecta, effectively, right? That anthem, that explainer, and that endorsement or customer story, this sort of like tripod of success of storytelling really helps assure alignment of messaging and everything internally at the brand. But then it's these powerful tools of storytelling tools to build trust along that buyer's journey in the sort of like messy middle of the marketing funnel, right?
And so do you have like the results of how that trifecta impacted the business?
Yeah. So the main thing is it helped them really go to market at a big prominent cybersecurity trade show. So it was like there's just kind of their key pieces in this moment in time, and sort of some byproducts of that is like the art that we produce, like through the design, ended up being leveraged for invites to media and press, and as part of the artwork of the trade show booth and things like that, right? So kind of I like to share that because it's like with this sort of video first mentality, there is this opportunity to leverage the assets, the library in different mediums or digital channels, right? These are their top two most, they're like their most popular videos on their YouTube channel. So those like are continuing to work. And then we've heard the qualitative through their stakeholders that like these have been really pivotal in this inflection point for us of like a relative rebrand, right? And then they've gone on to actually like do a more thorough rebrand of their palette and everything like that. So it's kind of these like tangible moments and engagement on social channels and things like that, but it's also this sort of internal dialogue and alignment of brand and message that's been really like we're proud of.
Yeah, and I imagine for company that's trying to enter new market and to scale, having that internal alignment also helps on a lot of levels, because if your team's not on board and rowing in the same direction, then it's a lot harder to actually make any progress. So it's cool that you're able to see some of the tangible results of that investment in the video. So when you're talking to someone or someone who's interested in like using video properly, what's kind of the first things that you recommend, or the things you look for them to already have in place, or that they need to get in place before they can really be ready for it? Because I think there's a lot of like, they just want to jump to the doing of the content. They don't want to do a lot of like so what are some of like the first steps or kind of prerequisite steps that companies need to have before they start doing a larger video campaign?
Yeah, I will answer that a couple different ways. One is, you can always just start. Like you can do it in this way, like we are here. Like there's tools abound, like HD cameras on your phone, and there's, just decent small lighting package at your desk. Like you can start going through the motions of storytelling and posture and delivery and cadence, and like sort of getting a general feel or sense of like the complexity of working in video. Like I think that's a very healthy thing to always be doing. Like it's craft, right? So it's sort of like the more time you afford to like exercise that, the better you will be at it. So with that preface, it's like when you're trying to do something very robust on behalf of a sort of like a inflection point of like that rebrand, or the go to market, or it's a product launch, or you're doing a big sales kickoff or a customer experience event, right? These sort of like pivotal moments, and you're putting in that like big investment in there, is like, again, put yourself in your audience's shoes as much as possible. And like, what can we do to help empower decision making in this moment, right? And it usually derives down to those like FAQs, who, what, where, when, why, right? So it's like producing individual tools, individual videos that answers those FAQs, like really helps support that dialogue that you're trying to have in a repeatable way, and in the most sort of like human way possible. That's not in a one-on-one conversation, right? Like, yeah, ideally you can have a one-to-one conversation with any and all of your prospects forever, but like that's not like, that doesn't support scale, right? So like using video to ensure that your most like repeatable message is done thoughtfully and elegantly, and in a very visual, on brand way, is a really good investment, because it is just like time you're getting back, and it's a representation of your brand that's being showcased in a repeatable way.
Yeah, I think I like what you said about thinking about what are the most frequently asked questions your audience has and answering those. Because I think so many companies, especially in the startup space, get so wrapped up in what they find exciting about what they're doing, and not understanding what their audience actually wants to know about it. And so they create content that talks past or over, or just avoids what their audience is actually interested in. And so it fails to land. And I think by understanding what your audience actually wants to know and wants to feel or needs to feel at the point they are in the relationship with your business, is a much better question to ask when starting content, rather than, well, what do we want to say about it? Because it doesn't matter what you want to say about it. It's about what your audience wants to know or needs to hear and needs to feel about it to move forward, or basically to strengthen that relationship. Because I think it's less about trying to force them through, or can I push them through a funnel these days. It's more about give them what they need when they need it for whatever stage they're at, and let the relationship build organically or kind of naturally. And because if you're constantly trying to force them to like the buying decision before they're ready, you're just going to keep like pushing them away. But if you just give them the resources and let them move at their own pace with and with more like incentives rather than like motivations, then it's a way to build that trust in that relationship in a way that shows you're actually caring about them and where they're at, and not just trying to push them through this linear funnel mindset, because it's a very different experience for them going through it than when you're trying to, from the perspective of the person who's kind of holding the funnel. So I really like that aspect of what you said there. So, well, thank you so much for being on the show today and connect with me, Tim. If you enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection podcast, please like, leave a review, and share it. If you'd like to connect with myself or Tim, check out the links in the show notes. And remember, no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.